bargains! Enemy lifespans have been massively reduced! This special offer is never to be repeated! Anyway, just getting too much into the seller spirit there. Anna... Well, firstly I should talk about Anna herself. The fact that she joins your army is a really big deal for long-time fans of the Fire Emblem series. Anna has been a recurring character in pretty much every single installment of the series. This is the first time ever that an incarnation of her has ever joined as an actual playable character. And yeah, that's a really big deal. After so long, 13 games, and finally we can recruit one of the Anna sisters. And we've been waiting so long, but does she live up to all the hype? Well, she's actually pretty good. Firstly, I want to draw your attention to her starting stats. Those are some pretty impressive stats for a promoted character. I mean, one who starts out promoted. Now, after playing Heroes of Light and Shadow, as much as I liked that game, it did make me lose a lot of faith in Intelligent Systems' ability to make a good pre-promote, because most of their base stats were absolutely terrible for their level. I mean, you had level 10 pre-promotes who, well, started off level 10 promoted and had stats that were, like, 10 in, like, everything. Which was pretty stupid and terrible. Anna here, however, actually has pretty good starting stats, and again, they do vary based on what difficulty you're playing. They'll be a bit lower on normal and a bit higher on lunatic. But these stats are kind of what you'd expect from someone you'd raise to level 20 and then promoted. Having pretty good stats in skill and speed, and a very good stat in luck, her defense is incredibly low, but I guess that makes sense since she's more of a thief-type character. Her resistance is alright though, and her strength is... Well, I admit that's kind of weak. Strength is not exactly her main asset. Her magic is really the main thing that she has going for her. It's pretty decent for her class, and that's quite a rare thing. Anna's growths are interesting because if you're looking just at the base growths, for the most part, they're all pretty much, relatively average all round, which means, kind of like Libra, Anna has no particular strengths but no particular weaknesses either. Well, except for one, that luck stats. Yeah, her luck is pretty ridiculous. She has one of the highest luck growths in the game, and with that base in luck and a +3 luck cap, luck is definitely her main asset. She will be, well, it's almost impossible to critical her. She'll be getting a decent amount of criticals and dodges herself, so that is definitely really helpful. Sadly, she can't have Arms Thrift. That would have been amazing if she could have had Arms Thrift, but yeah, that's annoying. Her caps overall, apart from luck, aren't too spectacular. Only a +1 in skill, but to make up for that, her negative caps are only -1 to both defense and strength. Now, the -1 strength means she won't be hitting as hard eventually, and -1 defense, well, her defense is already pretty low, so it's not like that's going to be that much of a big deal, but yeah, her caps, apart from luck, are fairly standard. Nothing particularly amazing, but nothing particularly terrible either. Having a 0 in magic is actually surprisingly good though, because Anna starts out as a trickster, a promotion option for thieves that uses both swords and staves. Now, the thing is, you might have heard in pretty much every other character who could have potentially become a trickster, I always recommended against it because all of them had absolutely terrible magic. Anna is a rare trickster and probably one of the only ones in the game who actually has decent enough magic to be an effective healer. So she's one of the few characters who's actually really good as a trickster. Also, her being a trickster with decent magic, she'll benefit very well from magical weapons, mainly the Levin sword, which she'll be able to use better than most physical swords, and better than most other tricksters would be able to, thanks to, well, again, her good magic. So, overall, yeah, Anna is actually pretty decent, and she's one of the few tricksters who's actually good at the job, but she's not just good as a trickster. Her growths are pretty all-round, meaning that she can be decent at just about anything. Well, anything she has the option to become, so let's check out those options. Anna's class options, well, most notably, as a trickster, she has access to the Thief line. Now, Anna already starts off with Lock Touch and Movement +1 from the Thief class, so there's very little reason to D-class her back down to Thief. So, I wouldn't really recommend doing that. But as a trickster, though, she'll eventually learn Lucky 7, which, well, makes her even luckier, for the first 7 turns of a battle, and that's actually quite a long time, all things considered. She'll have plus 30 accuracy and evasion. I've mentioned this before, but this is a very good skill overall. Shame she doesn't have that many other evasion skills to combine with it, but, it's not a bad skill, again, especially seeing that 7 turns is actually a lot longer than you'd probably think. Most chapters will be relatively close to over in 7 turns, so it will be effective for the vast majority of a battle, usually. And the other skill that she learns here is Acrobat. I've discussed how good this is before, but yeah, Acrobat is a really great skill, especially seeing that she does have access to 2 mounted classes. And that does carry over, and that's really useful because mounted classes, well, they tend to get a lot of movement penalties, but Acrobat totally ignores that. But even on its own, Acrobat will let her cross rivers, desert terrain, anything that would normally slow people down. Won't stop Anna from making her sails. Now, Anna can also go to Assassin from this branch, which of course comes with the always useful lethality skill, which means that her low strength won't be a big deal because she'll be instantly killing stuff, and with a +1 skill cap and a decent skill growth, she'll have a fairly high chance of activating it too. She'll also have the access to the Pass skill, which is always useful, especially when combined with Acrobat, as, yeah, it'll let her have, well, incredibly unrestricted movement, unimpeded by terrain, and she'll be able to move straight through any enemies that are blocking the way, so that's also a very useful skill, and for someone like Anna, whose main benefit is going around picking locks, that is very helpful, because it means that enemies will never be able to block her from treasure, which, well, Anna... yeah, since she likes money so much, that's definitely helpful to her. Now, Assassin is also useful because, like I said before, Anna having fairly decent base growths all around means that she'll be able to do relatively well in any of her class options, and so her actual growths are mostly determined by her class. As an assassin, Anna will essentially swap around her magic and strength growths. She'll exchange the magic growth for a 50% strength growth, which is a lot better than it would be normally. And even though she has a -1 defense cap in the end, if you want to get Anna more strength, then reclassing her to Assassin and having her spend some time in that class will definitely be helpful. It'll also slightly boost her HP, skill, and speed growths as well. Assassin has some very good growths all round. I mean, maybe a little too good in my opinion, but anyway. As for Anna's other options, she has access to the Archer class as well. Now, Archer actually benefits quite a bit from the extra movement skills that she learns from Thief, Trickster, and Assassin. It'll mean that she'll be more mobile, and she'll be able to get around to pretty much any little area to shoot at enemies with a bow. It's actually not that bad of a class for her, and she gets access to some pretty okay skills, although, again, hit rate +20 is not that great on anyone who isn't Faria, but Bowfair is alright if you want to keep her as an archer. Although her actual strength growth is not that high as an archer, it's still kind of an option. She also has access to the Bow Knight class, which, like I said before, really benefits from Acrobat and Pass and Movement +1. That'll take up a lot of her skill slots though, but being mounted and having access to all those movement skills means she'll be able to get around the battlefield very, very easily. And she'll also learn Rally skill here, but yeah, she only has 2 rallies overall. I guess they can be okay, but she's not the best rally user, really. Anna's other class option is Mage, and she actually does pretty okay in it, considering that she, well, she's able to use staves as a trickster, and she gets a pretty decent magic growth from being a trickster as well. So, she can do well as both a physical class and as a magic user, something that very few characters can claim. Of course, to compensate for this, as a mage, she's not quite as good as the characters who start out as mages. Her growths are overall basically a slightly worse version of Miriel, just with a lot more luck. And maybe a tiny bit more durability, but that's not saying much. Here she can promote to either Sage or Dark Knight. Sage will, again, make her more of a primary magic user and let her learn a good skill to help with that, Tome Fair. But, if only Tome Fair worked with staves. Unfortunately, it doesn't. That would have made her really good as a trickster, but, Yeah, sadly, Tome Fair only works with actual offensive magic, and so it will only work while she's in the Mage class branch. It's okay, but I'd rather use other people as sages like Muriel. And as a Dark Knight, Anna is, again, one of the few people who actually does this class pretty well. She'll have decent growths in almost everything as a Dark Knight, just nothing too spectacular. She'll basically be decent all round. And again, as a mounted unit, she'll benefit from all those movement increasing skills from before. She'll also learn, I keep saying it, Slow Burn is pretty much worthless, but Life Taker is really, really not. And that'll certainly help with her low durability, as it'll, yeah, heal her by 50% of her HP every time she kills something. Well, one time she kills something. It's still a very good skill overall. So really, Anna is not really spectacular at anything except being a trickster, but that's only because everyone else who has access to Trickster is pretty terrible at it. So, I know that's not really that's saying much, but still. One of her best advantages is the fact that she can do decently in just about any of her class options. She's a very good all-rounder and is one of the few people who can do both physical and magical damage decently well. Of course, the price to pay there is, compared to actual specialists, she's not as good in one of them as they would be, but she can do both, and that's a real advantage sometimes. Unfortunately, Anna does have one very big gameplay flaw that I haven't really gone into yet, so I'll just talk about it quickly now. I did mention it later on in this actual chapter video, though. Basically, Anna is one of those characters who are part of what I like to call Generation 1.5. They're technically not part of the first generation. Basically, unlike Donnie, who was free to marry anyone despite being a side quest character, Anna is not. In fact, the only person Anna can marry is the Avatar, if they're male. And because of this, unlike all the other first-generation females, Anna has no children associated with her, which means you don't need to worry about pairing her. It's perfectly fine to leave her single and you won't miss out on anything. The only way she'll be able to have a child is with the Avatar. And because of this, Anna's support options are very heavily restricted. Apart from the Avatar, I'm pretty sure she only has one other support, and that's not with a character we won't be getting until Paralogue 17. Yeah. Considering how overpowered supports are in this game, that's a pretty big disadvantage that Anna has, and it's something that she shares with a few other characters who we'll be meeting later. But yes, these are all members of what I like to call Generation 1.5, kind of halfway between the first and second generations. And because of this, they can't really support with many people from the first generation, or the second generation at that. Really, the Avatar is one of their few options. And again, this can be a problem, so just be warned that when you are using Anna, despite the fact that she's a pretty decent character to use, she is very heavily gimped in the support department, so just beware of that. Now on to voice acting trivia. Anna is voiced by Karen Strassman, and she has, I mostly knew her from one particular game series, but looking her up, she's had a lot of roles in gaming, and so much so that I'm not going to be able to cover them all in this video. And that's good because Karen Strassman actually voices the next character we'll be recruiting, so the very next character bio that I do will be for another character voiced by her. So I'm going to split up her voice acting trivia between now and between the other character that she voices. So, firstly, well, her voicing Anna here means she also voices all of the shopkeeper Annas as well. But I mostly know Karen Strassman from her work in the Persona series, where she actually demonstrates some surprising vocal range. In Persona 3, she plays Aegis, who is a robot, and has to be completely emotionless most of the time. In Persona 4, she plays Nanako Dojima, the protagonist's 6-year-old cousin, and she actually does an amazing job at it. Now, one of the things that I want to say here is, often when you hear adult actors voicing child characters, you can really tell that it's an adult voicing them. it doesn't really sound all that believable. Karen Strassman as Nanako is one of the very few adult voice actors who, when voicing a child, actually does a really convincing job of sounding like a child. I, in fact, had no idea that she was the same person who voiced Ikus until I looked it up, and I was really surprised when I found out. She does just such a good job of sounding like a child that it's kind of rare. I also find her role as Anna here kind of hilarious for that reason, because Nanako was always obsessed with a department store called Juness, and now her voice actress is playing a famous shopkeeper. Which, yeah, I find kind of hilarious. Every day is great at your secret shop, provided that you can find it. Now, she also voices someone else in Persona 4, but that someone else happens to be the single most spoilery character in the entire game, and I cannot mention their name for fear of gigantic spoilers! So, I will refrain from saying that, but I will just say, it's pretty amazing. She's played a whole ton of other video game roles, from games like Mortal Kombat to League of Legends even, and I'll talk about some of her others next time, because yeah, in the very next character profile, we'll also be dealing with a character voiced by her.